Hello, and welcome to Soul Aligned CEO Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Mori, and I'm really excited to be back recording. And today's episode, I wanted to share with you about something very meaningful to me and something that I think all of us experience at different points in our lives. And that is starting again intentionally. So, welcome. So, as I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about for my first episode back, since I've been on a little bit of a hiatus, I thought that many of us could relate to this topic, starting again. Now, you may be asking yourself, okay, well, don't you just mean starting over? Yes and no. I wanted to be really intentional about the wording of this episode because language matters. And when you think about starting over, it has a connotation of something didn't work out or something failed. And that's really not what I wanted to be talking about today. Starting again, however, has a different feeling. At least for me, it does. You're starting again. You're in control. You're choosing your path, and you can do that very intentionally. So, as I was thinking about this topic and we kind of go through this human journey, there are several times throughout our lives where it's very natural to start something and then it comes to an end. Just think about when you were a child. You'd start elementary school and then it comes to an end. You'd then start middle school and then it comes to an end. And then high school and then potentially college. And all of those new beginnings that come to an end are then celebrated, right? Your accomplishment and what you achieved is, shared and it's appreciated. And people that are in your lives really take this as an important milestone. So it got me thinking then, why, as we proceed through our adult lives, if something starts and then ends, why does that have a different meaning? Like, why, if you are in a romantic relationship and then that comes to an end, is it something that is bad or something went wrong? The same thing with potentially a job or a business. If something starts and then it comes to an end, how would things be so different if we looked at what was accomplished, what was learned, what we took away from that experience? And then how much easier would it be potentially to start again? So I would like for you to keep a little bit of an open mind as we proceed through this episode today. I'm in no way trying to suggest that anyone skip over the emotions that come with something coming to an end. There could be sadness, there could be frustration, there could be anger, hurt, pain, so many feelings when something comes to an end, whether it's by our choice or by someone else's. So I'm in no way saying skip those feelings or don't process the emotion or the pain. I'm suggesting that as you go through that, to know that when you come out on the other side, you have this opportunity. And the language, although very minute, starting over versus starting again is one small choice that you can make as you proceed, through this new beginning. So things change, right? And as I mentioned just a little bit ago, sometimes things change and it's not by our choice. Maybe a friendship or a partnership or a relationship comes to an end that you didn't want it to come to an end. Maybe someone else kind of led that decision. And then there are times where you're making that difficult decision that something is no longer aligned and it needs to come to an end. And as you go through that process, it can be scary. I think in general, we tend to stay in any aspect of our lives that feels comfortable. And I'm only speaking from my own experience. I was married. I was just recently in a serious relationship that came to an end. So I have two very fresh perspectives going through my divorce 6 years ago and then going through a relationship ending earlier this year. Now, neither of those endings were ones that I kind of wanted to occur. But both of those endings, I knew that it was occurring for the best. And it doesn't make it any easier, but it gives you the opportunity to decide whether you are going to embrace the ending or you're going to fear it. And so before we get into kind of how do you take the next steps and really proceed to start again, I want to spend a few minutes just talking about how do you know when something, should come to an end. It's a difficult decision, right? And again, whether it's a relationship, a job, a business, really anything that you're participating in, I would say if you're asking yourself, you probably already know. I think a lot of times we look past what we don't want to face, or we kind of just pause any considerations that may lead to something changing. And so I'd like to suggest that at that first kind of nudge of, maybe this isn't exactly what I thought it would be, or maybe something seems off. And even more importantly, that first moment where you maybe start to feel not as happy as you once were. Your body tells you 100% of the time if you feel good or something feels off. And I think a lot of times we ignore that feeling. And if you are in something right now, again, whether it's a relationship, a profession, a partnership, and you are wondering, is it time that this comes to an end? Has it run its course? Ask yourself those questions. Is something off? Are you fulfilled? How do you feel in your body? Is this something that you want to keep working towards? Because I think the alternative is we often will stay in things maybe longer than we should because it's easier than starting again. And I can tell you from experience, I started dating about 2 years ago. So I took about 4 years after my divorce. And, dating as a 50-year-old was very different than the last time I dated in my early 30s. And so going through that process a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was definitely a learning curve. And I feel like, I had to really quickly navigate a landscape that was very unfamiliar to me. And so as the relationship that I was in last year started to come to an end, I could feel myself getting anxious about it because knowing what potentially would lie ahead for me, whether that was months, a year, however long, was that starting again. And I didn't feel excited about it. And this is when my relationship is coming to an end. And I want to have that closure and I want to have that grace. And I could feel that fear inside me. And so I know that there are more people out there that feel that same feeling. And it could have been easier to stay. And I've done that at different points in my life. I've stayed in something longer than I should because it was scary to think about starting again. So, if you're in a similar situation, I just want you to know that trust that feeling inside of you. And even if it feels scary, and even if you're uncertain about how things will be, you have to choose for yourself what's right in this moment. And so anything that I'm talking about today, again, it's not medical or professional advice. A lot of these emotions can be overwhelming. And I do want to encourage you, if you do need help, to seek out professional resources. But I also wanted to encourage you to think about things maybe a little alternatively. So now we've talked about this whole concept of starting again and touched a little bit on, how do you know, like, when you should start again? Like, when does something naturally come to an end? I do want to say that no matter where you are on your journey, and if you're in a relationship that's coming to an end, or you just recently went through a breakup, it's not a race. Coming to a place where you feel good and you're ready to start again, no matter what that looks like, can take weeks, months, years. It's not a race. You are not trying to get to some finish line. So just know that, there's no milestone that you need to wake up and compare yourself to. I see a lot of people doing that, especially after romantic relationships come to an end. There's an immediate need to kind of find that next relationship, almost to like get a dopamine hit in some ways. And no judgment. If you're ready and you've gotten yourself to a place where you can be in another partnership again, that's great. But for those of you who need time, there's nothing wrong with that. And so just keep that in mind. There is no race and there's no imaginary finish line that you're trying to get to. One of the philosophies that I really try to live by every single day, and some days it's easier than others. And it's a phrase that Dr. Wayne Dyer used to say a lot in his lectures and in various ways in his many books. It's be open to everything, but attached to nothing. So be open to everything, but attached to nothing. What does that mean? Well, be open to everything. So you're starting again. So be open every single day to encounters, to spreading love, to having small moments of joy. And as you experience those things at the same time, if you can allow yourself to not be attached to any outcome, then more often than not, an outcome will surprise you. And so I'm sharing this because I see a lot of people that very quickly want to get into another relationship. And again, like I said before, that's fine. I think everyone goes at their own pace. But if you are open going into that relationship and not attached, then that releases all these expectations that this is going to be something. And especially as women, right? Maybe when we were younger, we had this like ability, I'll call it, to you meet a guy and you're already thinking about where could this go? You're on the second or third date and you're already thinking about, could I move in with this guy? Do we have enough in common? After maybe a few weeks or a few months, are we going to be in a long-term relationship? Could we get married? I myself, when I was younger, and I'm talking like 20, 25 years ago, had this like process of I would evaluate things on its potential versus being just open to what I was experiencing and not necessarily attached to it. I think I potentially would have felt a lot freer and maybe a lot less stress back then had I approached things like this. So, what I'm really suggesting with this concept is however starting again looks for you, consider as you proceed to whether it's dating again and meeting people, spending time, be open to what's occurring. And at the same time, try not to be attached to what that outcome potentially could be. So for me, that's really the first step. When I'm starting again, it's having that openness and then also the awareness to not make something more than what it is. So that's the first part. The second part really is more energetic. And I want to introduce some concepts that I will dive deeper into in later episodes. And it's around your energy. And so you may be thinking, okay, we're going to talk about like manifestation. Yes and no. I'm a big believer in how you are is what is presented back to you. And so this is again why there is no race, because if you're in a place where something came to an end and it's still painful for you, or you still feel that sadness or frustration, that's the energy that you're kind of emitting out into the universe. And so that's why it's really important to take the time to work through that, because you want to be starting again when you are in a good energetic headspace and heart space. And so when you're in that place and you're starting again, you have a resonance of peace, of joy, of potentially even excitement. And so I myself have a practice morning and night, just really easy. When I wake up in the morning, I take the first minute or so, even before I open my eyes, and I think about what do I want my day to be? And if I'm in a place in my life, as I am right now, where I'm starting again, I want my day to be filled with possibility, with joy, with potential for sharing and receiving love in every interaction. And so I'm in that headspace. Now, could I have done that, a week after my relationship ended? For me, no, probably not. I wasn't in a place where I could project that energy. So I wasn't in the mindset of starting again. I wasn't really open to encountering people or even considering going on a date or talking to another man. But now that time has passed, I'm able to be in that headspace. And so in the morning, when I'm thinking about my day, I'm now including that. I'm now letting the universe know, okay, I'm ready. I'm open. And, here's what I'm open to. And so as you're laying in bed in the morning, you can think about that, and include whatever gratitude practice you have, breathing, whatever you want to focus on. When you do that right away in the morning and you kind of solidify that with your energetic resonance, it's what's the energy that I want to put out there for today? And then as you proceed throughout the day, you can kind of check in. And typically I'll give myself like 2 words, when I'm thinking about how do I want the day to be. And they're often the same, every single day. And I'm thinking about that joy and that love that I want to experience in every encounter, whether it's at the grocery store or I'm running some other errands, I'm getting gas for my car, I'm on a Zoom call for my business, I check myself because that energy that I'm putting out there, no matter the situation, is a constant reminder to the universe of, okay, here's where she's at. Here's what she's looking for. Here's what she's open to, right? And that's really important to consider because if there's something that you want in your life as you are starting again, be very mindful of how you are proceeding throughout your day because your energy is like a frequency. It's a radio station, right? And the universe is tuning into that and just test it out. I know a lot of people think that manifestation and energetic resonance concepts like this are a little bit woo woo. Okay, sure. But here we are. Like, I am talking into the ether, and later you will watch or listen to this. And so, this is energy and frequency. And so, this is occurring. And that energy that you are putting out there is really no different than being received at a later point. It's like somebody's watching it and what's being returned back to you. So that's the morning piece of this activity. And it's really simple, less than a minute. What's the energy that you're going to be for the day? What is one or two words that really summarize how you want to proceed throughout the day? And then check yourself. Maybe you are waiting in line for too long and you can feel yourself getting a little agitated. Remind yourself, what were my words for today? What's the energy that I want to put out there? What am I open to? So you proceed throughout your day and you're conscious of the energy. And you're not going through the day like, hey, I hope I bump into some guy and I'm going to flirt with him and I hope I look cute. No, you can. But I have found that it's a lot easier to proceed throughout the day, be the energy that you want to be, and then you're almost a magnet back to whatever it is that you are trying to attract into your life, whether it be relationships, money, health, whatever it is that you focus on is what expands. Where your mind and energy goes is what grows. And these are not new concepts. Many spiritual teachers, growth minded leaders, self development, professionals, they all speak to this type of resonance and energy. And so as you go throughout your day, then you kind of come to the end of the day. And to take it full circle, I always like to kind of evaluate how did I do throughout the day energetically? Because it's a practice, right? No different than if you're trying to get in better shape. You would commit to, hey, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. Hey, I'm going to walk 3 or 4 miles a day. And then you check yourself, right? Hey, did I complete what I committed to from a physical standpoint? And so checking in with yourself and seeing, hey, did I complete what I committed to from an energetic standpoint is really no different. And so as I'm winding down for the evening, I kind of think about it. How did my day unwind? What was I open to throughout the day? What occurred that was really a reflection of my resonance and my energy? And was there any aspect of the day where I kind of slid a little bit? And now I can be mindful of that, not hard on myself, but really very, very attuned to what I am putting out there. Because whether you believe it or not, the energy that you put out is what is coming back to you. So that's one exercise, kind of energetically, that helps me. Another thing that I want to talk about, and this is somewhat more spiritual, And so please be mindful. I am aware that people believe in, different things, and there's a broad spectrum of spirituality. But one concept that I want to share with you guys is this concept of timelines. And if you are newer to spirituality, this might seem a little bit interesting or different. Keep an open mind. And so if you think about this current now moment that you are in, that I am in right now, I am currently recording this episode. Now, when I come to an end of this episode, my plan is to share it out there on the internet so everybody can listen to it. That's that trajectory, right? That's that timeline. Now, there could be an alternative option of I get to the end of this episode, I listen to the playback, and maybe it's not as insightful or helpful as I hoped it would be. And maybe I scrap the episode. That would be a complete opposite timeline, right? So, in that very simple example of just using this podcast that you're listening to right now, I energetically know that I'm finishing this episode and that I'm putting it out there and that many people will listen to it and gain something from it. That is the future path that I am marching towards. I can feel it. So, as you're thinking about any aspect of your life, and we'll just go back to the relationship example because it's where I am at right now. Now, I could envision myself, in another relationship, walking on the beach again, hand in hand with someone that I care deeply about, getting to know someone, sharing moments with each other. I can feel into that, right? Like I can feel in my heart how warm and how happy and how excited I am. That's one timeline, correct? Now, there could be many different trajectories that are either slightly similar or maybe vastly different from that occurrence. And so it's almost like a movie. This might be a really easy way to think about it. And so you can watch a movie and you can think you know how it's going to end, and you can hope you know how it ends. And then the movie ends. And so it could either catch you off guard or it could be what you had planned. And so as you proceed through your current now moment, because I do really believe that here we are in this moment and this is what exists, you have the opportunity to feel into that timeline or that existence that's coming towards you. And so bear with me if this is a little too esoteric, but if you are thinking about being in a relationship again and you can feel in your heart, in your body, what that feels like. And, you could feel it so strongly that, you're even tearing up about it because you know that feeling of love, of companionship, right? You're calling that timeline in to your current trajectory. So go back and listen to the last minute if this has been a little bit confusing. But this concept of timelines, you are on a trajectory, and that trajectory is 100% attached to how you're feeling about it. And so if you can think about everything that you want, and if it's a relationship, if it's financial freedom, if it's a different profession or a business, if you can harness that feeling of how do you feel if you were in that future now moment and you had what you want, you can call that into you. You can signal the universe to, hey, I am focused on this trajectory. I am feeling myself in that romantic relationship again. I am calling that timeline into me. And you will be so surprised how quickly things align. But you have to be very conscious of where your mind goes, because even the slightest, like, course correction or, different direction or energetic frequency that you're putting out there, you control that trajectory. You control the energy that you're putting out there, and you really control what I like to call that timeline that you're walking towards. So, the easiest takeaway from this part of the conversation is, how would you feel if you have what you want? Feel those feelings now. I've talked about this before. Nothing is stopping you from feeling that joy, that love, that really heartwarming feeling that you'll feel when you have that loving relationship. And if that's the energy around you, if that's what you're putting out there, then from kind of like a quantum uh, physics reality, that's the path that's kind of narrowing in. And the universe says, okay, Jenny is really aligned with this timeline. This is what she wants, right? So I know that we have kind of discussed a lot in this very first episode back, thinking about this whole concept of starting again versus starting over. Now, that's where you can start, because that language is very important. So, if you're in the middle of something that's coming to an end, really try to allow yourself to realize that it is going to be a new beginning. And I'm not sugarcoating the feelings and the hurt and the pain and everything that you'll experience. As you get on the other side of that, then you can choose. You can choose how you want to start again intentionally. Remember that morning exercise of setting your intention, attaching one or two words to how you want your energy to flow throughout the day, and then check in with yourself. Hold yourself accountable at the end of the day. And then, addition to that energy that you're putting out there, really trying to harness that feeling and to take that feeling and guide yourself into an inevitable future that you want. You're choosing that timeline, kind of like those old choose your own adventure type of stories. Whether you believe in the frequency or the quantum physics behind all of this, it doesn't really matter, because the universe understands this and will recognize that you are feeling deeply into the inevitable future or timeline that you want. So I hope that this episode has given you some things to consider, maybe some bright spots to look forward to if you are in the process of starting again. And I wish I could give everybody a big hug, that's maybe going through something painful. Trust me, I get it. I get it. This human journey is a lot sometimes. And I just want to commend all of you who are being brave and who are choosing to kind of forge a path that maybe isn't the most comfortable or the most easy. Starting again can be a very beautiful thing. And so I really just want to encourage you to embrace it and not be fearful of it. And so I'm sorry I'm getting emotional. I just feel so very connected, because at the end of the day, we are here together. We're all walking each other home. So I just want to say thank you so much for your support of the podcast. I am planning to come back more frequently, and I am planning to have both solo and guest episodes. So your support wherever you listen to podcasts is appreciated. And please follow me on Instagram at Soul Aligned CEO Podcast. And until next time, I wish you so much peace, love, and joy as you pursue being soul aligned.